Literally our job, demanding facts and answers instead of just taking a president's word for it. So you're in Ohio right now. You've been holding these town halls in red districts across the country. You're saying Democrats need to do a better job of reaching Trump voters. The issues you identified there were immigration, right, DEI, and woke. You think Democrats' problem was that you just didn't do a good enough job explaining the policies and not that voters simply didn't just reject what you were selling, particularly on immigration, I wonder?
No, on immigration, what we were asking for is a bipartisan policy that strengthens immigration.
Tim Walz walked into the interview expecting another easy TV appearance, but Jake Tapper turned it into a public roasting. What should have been routine quickly became humiliating, like showing up to class without homework only for the teacher to project your failures for everyone to see. Walz's confidence evaporated instantly, and he crumbled under the pressure faster than a microwave top.
Not only Biden, but Kamala Harris was heralding Bidenomics, pretending that there wasn't a problem at the border. And then fundamentally, this idea that President Biden was up for another 4 years of the job, while Americans in poll after poll for year after year were saying he's too old to do the job. Your party stood against all of those things.
Look, Joe Biden
hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. Tim Walz walking into an interview with Jake Tapper was like a kid bringing crayons to a spelling bee, doomed from the start. The sweat was visible before Tapper even leaned in. Walz came prepared to flex his gubernatorial muscles, but instead stumbled over his own talking points like a clumsy uncle trying to breakdance at a wedding. The result was pure cringe.
Don't you think your party needs to acknowledge that President Biden was not up for the job of running for re-election and that this was a major mistake by
He made that decision.
I know, but you all went along with the idea that he was up for it and he wasn't. And everybody saw it and the country rejected it.
It wasn't just bad, it was historic. This wasn't a simple fumble. It was a full-on face, and Tapper didn't even press that hard. A few basic questions sent Walz spiraling like a broken Roomba. His answers landed somewhere between gibberish and desperate spin, all while forcing that awkward politician's grin. The kind that says, I know my downfall is being recorded in 4K.
We are in this unprecedented situation right now because Democratic voters had a deep lack of confidence in President Biden's ability to serve another term. And this is a point that your fellow Minnesota Democrat, Congressman Dean Phillips, was trying to make when he challenged Biden in the primary. You belittled his effort. You called it a political sideshow. You called it a crazy thing. But wasn't Dean Phillips actually right? Wasn't he bringing up an issue that was correct and you were on the wrong side?
Let's be honest. Walz carried himself like a substitute teacher convinced the kids respect him. The kind who says, all right guys, let's be cool, while chaos already reigns. He brought that same misplaced confidence into CNN. Only this time the classroom wasn't rowdy teens with paper airplanes. It was Jake Tapper, calmly dismantling every illusion Walz walked in with.
I think that you're the one that set this tone, and there's this shift. The Harris campaign seems to be following your lead, echoing this language. Why do you think weird is a more effective attack line against Trump than what Democrats have been done previously, which is argue that he's an existential threat to democracy?
Yeah, and it's an observation on this, and being a school teacher, I see a lot of things. But my point on this is people kept talking about, look, Donald Trump.
The meltdown peaked when Walz tried boasting about inflation and the economy, painting Minnesota as some fiscal paradise. In reality, the state budget has relied on more tricks than a carnival magician. One moment he bragged about growth, the next he stumbled over deficits like a husband explaining a Vegas-sized credit card bill. Meanwhile, Tapper just watched with the expression of a diner handed the check before the food arrives.
What we allowed ourselves to do is we got timid, and then when we got power, we didn't pass things that improved people's lives. This whole idea, I think the Democratic Party gets theoretical, talk about food insecurity.
Walz had the audacity to treat inflation like it was some myth, as if struggling families were just imagining empty wallets, while people across the Midwest are counting pennies for groceries and gas. He painted Minnesota as a Silicon Valley meets Disney World paradise. In reality, folks are choosing between heat and rent. It was straight up gaslighting. Don't believe your wallet. Believe me, the kind of clown energy that deserves its own circus tent. And then came the border talk. Like every Democrat on script, he downplayed the crisis until buses of migrants land in their cities. The whole performance was pure theater. Watching Walz scramble on CNN was like bad improv, awkward flailing, forced smiles, and random detours about values and community. At times, it felt less like politics and more like interpretive dance titled Man. Confused by basic questions,
She's not here to say, I told you so, although obviously that's what she was saying about all the Trump chaos. We're seeing, I have to say though, what does I told you so really mean here? I mean, people heard her message. They did not vote for her. She lost every battleground state. You yourself have criticized the Harris-Walz campaign for being too cautious. She may have told the American people, she may have warned the American people, but she didn't do it compellingly enough to.
Tim Walz walked into CNN expecting an easy interview, but Jake Tapper turned it into a masterclass in public meltdown. Walz stumbled from the first question, sweating through answers about the economy, inflation, and the border like a man improvising bad improv. He bragged about Minnesota as if it were a Disney World meets Silicon Valley paradise while families were counting pennies for groceries and gas. Every response was a mix of awkward smiles, flailing arms, and empty talking points. By the end, even Tapper seemed amused. Walz thought this was his moment to shine his chance to look presidential, but instead, he became the internet's latest meme. Minnesota didn't get a statesman that day. It got a cautionary tale in cringeworthy political theater.
That is the absolute point. And look, when I criticize, I'm criticizing myself. I own this. I'm part of the ticket. And somebody has to come up with a strategy. I think this is exactly right. This is the thing. Look, Democrats, it was a good night in Wisconsin. I was over there. We saw that happen. Donald Trump's doing this. Just to be clear, nobody on the Democratic side is celebrating this. And those folks in the street are not celebrating that Donald Trump's making all these errors. I think what the vice president's saying is that was pretty self-evident that he was going.
The timing made it worse. Democrats needed a strong, polished voice to defend Biden, downplay inflation, and dodge the border crisis. Instead, they sent out Tim Walz, who turned into a walking blooper reel like putting the water boy in the Super Bowl and expecting a touchdown. Walz, known as the calm, pragmatic Midwestern leader, unraveled under real pushback, faster than a cheap sweater in the dryer. Spin machines will try to save him, but the clips don't lie. America saw a governor attempt a national performance and come out fumbling, awkward, and
all of those things.
Look, I think we got intellectualized on this. I think the fact of the matter is Joe Biden did soft land the economy. None of us are saying we should be soft on the border, but we allow a vacuum and Donald Trump fills it, the 800-pound gorilla, and their narrative starts to stick, and we...
Reality check. Tim Walz isn't the rising Democratic star some claim. He's not the calm Midwestern voice who can soothe flyover country. He's the guy who cracked like cheap glass under pressure. Midterms and 2028. Hopefuls were watching. And if he's the future, Democrats might as well prep their concession speeches. On CNN, Walz humiliated himself, pivoting to empty platitudes about community and values every time Tapper pressed him. It was a masterclass in saying nothing while sounding like you're saying something loud, chaotic, and completely hollow.
Violence, we've already established that. What's the difference between that and Tim Walz saying, I get a kick out of it?
First of all, Tim Walz is a complete moron to me. I have to be very honest, and I'm not surprised why the American people did not choose him.
Fully awkward was Walz's body language. He leaned in, nodding excessively, letting out nervous chuckles that practically screamed, "Please believe me, I have no idea what I'm talking about." The overcompensation was unreal, and yes, everyone noticed. Meanwhile, Tapper didn't break a sweat. Somewhere in Washington, a staffer probably pitched, "Let's put Tim on Tapper's show he's great under pressure," only to regret it instantly. Instead of defending Biden, Walz made the economic message look like a bad pyramid scheme. "Please stop asking questions before I collapse."
Is potentially going to end constitutional liberties that we have, end voting. I do believe all those things are a real possibility, but it gives him way too much power. Listen to the guy. He's talking about Hannibal Lecter and shocking sharks and just whatever crazy thing pops into his mind. And I thought we just give him way too much credit. And I think one of the things is when you just ratchet down some of the the scary.
Minnesota deserves better than this circus act. A state of hard-working, honest people got a governor fumbling through national TV, pretending the economy is fine while heating bills soar. It wasn't leadership, it was smiling, gaslighting. And this isn't Walz's first awkward flop. But this interview did more than humiliate him. It exposed the fragile bubble around Democratic talking points. Bidenomics, cooling inflation, feel good already, all fell apart when reality hit. No amount of Walz's awkward grin can hide struggling families and a message that simply doesn't land.
Argues that these tariffs are needed to bring American manufacturing back and to help American workers left behind in places like Minnesota. He has support from the UAW. What do you say to the UAW?
Here's the thing that the Democrats have to figure out. Donald Trump's language around this, he's not wrong that we've had manufacturing gutted. He's not wrong that we saw an outshoring. People of my generation were told, you know, there aren't going to be any manufacturing jobs, so you need to go to college and rack up student loan debt. The problem is Donald Trump's solution to this is not the solution. Now, UAW is right. Certain tariffs, if they're on to steel or if they're tarp.
Tucked away in the Midwest, until buses of migrants land at his doorstep. Suddenly, tough talk turns into calls for Washington help. Tapper pressed him, and his answers wobbled like jello in a sauna, trying to be both compassionate and tough. He just sounded confused, like ordering vegan at a Texas barbecue. Social media lit him up instantly. Clips went viral, memes exploded, and the confident governor became the guy who couldn't handle CNN. Even in a friendly environment, Walz humiliated himself, a political pillow fight lost to a toddler.
In war, but you have never deployed actually in a war zone. A campaign official said that you misspoke. Did you?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly proud. I've done 24 years of wearing the uniform of this country. Equally proud of my service in a public school classroom, whether it's Congress or the governor. He's a liar. My record speaks for itself, but I think people are coming to get to know me. I speak like they do.
You disgust me. How can you live with yourself?
I speak candidly. I wear my emotions on.
While Republicans are probably sending Jake Tapper thank you cards, he did their job for them. Walz's meltdown handed opponents free ammunition wrapped in a bow. He's fine running Minnesota or making local speeches, but on the national stage, he got smoked. No composure, no command of facts, no graceful pivots. Picture someone jogging on an overspeed treadmill, waving at cameras, then suddenly stumbling, flailing, and crashing into the wall. That was Tim Walz on CNN. A political wipeout broadcast for millions.
A veteran criticized Vice President Harris over the Afghanistan withdrawal. She has said that she was the last person in the room when President Biden decided to pull out of Afghanistan. You served, for people who don't know, you served in the Army National Guard for 24 years, including in Afghanistan. You were the highest ranking enlisted man in Congress. What was your reaction to the way the Biden-Harris administration executed that withdrawal, both with the disaster at Abbey Gate and the thousands of Afghan allies left behind?
Yeah, I served in Europe in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, Jake. In this country that is going to impact us. And if there is not a loyal opposition, if there's not some soul searching on our side, if there's not reaching out to those folks who are in the streets, they're leading right now.
So quick question.
I would tell everybody, you better get with them. Yeah.
Quick question, because we got to go. But you said you're not going to run for the Senate seat there. Are you going to run for a third term for governor? Are you possibly going to run for president in 2028?
Well, I'm certainly thinking about running again in Minnesota if that's what they want. I am not thinking about running in 2028. And my advice to folks is if in this moment you're planning for 2028, you're going to get rolled by the people.
It was predictable. Walz has always been more style than substance, more buzzwords than backbone. Under the spotlight, the cracks widened, and the facade collapsed. Tapper didn't humiliate, Walz did it himself. By the end, it wasn't an interview, it was a live autopsy of Democratic messaging, with him flatlining politically while insisting he was fine. He left thinking he'd done well, but the reality was clear. He went in to boost his brand and came out as late night comedy photo, a cautionary tale on full display.